Welcome, Amelia. I mean, I'm so truly grateful that you're here. You and I were just talking for very briefly that you're not feeling well, and with this flu that's going around everywhere. So grateful you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And actually, you are my last guest of the year in Audacious Conversation, which is a real honor to. It's a real treat to finish it off with you. So I would love to. We'll play. I mean, I will. For anybody who doesn't know you, which I doubt, but Amelia has built a 4 million business on the back of her amazing personal brand, and you and I met at the Tash TV talk beginning of the year, a long time
No,
ago.
we were just saying, we were like, oh, that was only a few weeks ago. No, it was in May. So long ago.
I know, and it's taken a while for me to get you here. So at least I got you this year. I didn't have to wait until next year. And, one of the things that I think Tash said at the time, which was wonderful, which is why I thought I'd love to have you on the Audacious Conversation, is because of your own opening of your own book, which is the personal branding playbook. And I'm going to read it out because your dedication is, this book is dedicated to anyone and everyone who has ever had the audacity to be 100% okay with the consequences of being themselves, online and offline. So with that, I'd love to explore, the definition of audacity for me is the 3 pillars of care, courage, and non-conformity. So we can go, which one is actually resonating most with you right now, Amelia? Care, courage, or non-conformity?
You know what? I love that you break them down into those 3 pillars, because it's funny, if you were describing to someone what the audacity means, it really is those 3 things. It's caring enough to try, it's not conforming to what other people want you to do, and it's having the courage to just do it, right? And that's where confidence comes from. We get asked, one of the most common questions I get asked by people is, how did you get so confident? My answer always is, because I just had the balls to do it. You get confidence from evidence that you can do something. To get evidence you can do something, you have to have the bollocks to do it. So I love that. I love that breakdown. Probably non-conformity. I think I don't think I've ever conformed. I've never been someone who just kind of fits very neatly into a box. Was never a popular kid at school, but I also wasn't the unpopular kid. I was never the top of my class, but I also wasn't really stupid. I've never really conformed to any of the labels or buckets that society wants to put you in. I've broken lots of rules. So I think non-conformity is probably the one that feels the most aligned to me right now anyway.
Right now, yeah, it's going with the energy. So let's follow that, actually. So I mean, I was going to ask you to maybe introduce yourself with something audacious about yourself.
Audacious. What is not audacious about myself? I had fuck in my headline on LinkedIn for about 3 years. That's no longer there because I'm gunning to be on mainstream TV, and I've told that that's a no. So we've taken that out there. But yeah, I don't know what the most audacious thing is about myself. I quit my job on a Friday to start a business that I had no experience in, and had my first 2 clients by that Thursday. That was pretty audacious. I got funding for my first business age 21. And DM'd someone on one of the senior leadership at ASOS at the time on LinkedIn and said, hey, do you want to start my brand? I got a meeting with them. That was pretty audacious. I don't know if there's any particular examples of audacity that stand out, because I think I just have the audacity generally to just do whatever I want, and not whatever I want, obviously within reason, but to make stuff happen. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make those things happen. But as by way of introduction, Alina, my name's Amelia, which is very my friends and family call me Millie. So it's always funny that I always speak to people at work. I'm Amelia. They say, oh, Amelia's the brand and Millie's the real person. So Millie or Amelia. But I've spent the last kind of 6 years posting content on LinkedIn, and then expanded onto TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And as you rightly said, I've generated $4 million off the back of my personal brand. Which I'm so grateful for. $4 million is so much money, and I wish I could say it went into my pocket. Anyone who's running a business knows that that's not how the world works. But I'm so grateful for not the money necessarily in isolation, but for the journey that has taken me on. And growing one of the leading UK personal branding agencies into what I'm doing now, which is very much more giving back to particularly women. Very similar mission, Alina, which is why I think Tash was so well versed when she pulled us together for that TV show. I wish I saw me 10 years ago when I first started, or 20 years ago when I first started my first business. I wish I saw more of me, more women taking risks, more women with the courage to ask what they want and not apologize for taking it, and find, even having the audacity to want to be a traditional mother whilst also building a multi-million-pound business. Like, I wanted to see her, and she just didn't exist. Social media wasn't as big of a thing it is now. So that's where I'm going on that journey now, is to inspire the next generation of female founders, and also inspire maybe women who are already built something but don't really feel quite confident enough to go to the next level.
I love that. And I love you to be Millie with me today.
Yeah,
25 minutes that we've got. But yeah, I love that. And I suppose, it is, you and I were talking about in women only because we can resonate a lot with that. And, I work with both, but we do a lot of work with the women. We've got inspiring women programs we have, and there are differences, in terms of, and certainly with the personal brand. So I'm curious, and I read your book, but one of the other books that I have used in my corporate work when I was talking about personal brand it's called Personal Brand or Branding for Brits by someone called Jennifer Holloway. I don't know if you came across her, which is interesting because, again, and I'm not a Brit, so I can, I can use that for the audacity of not having the diplomacy, I suppose, of being able to be direct. Worrying that but that's it's a very humorous book, and she uses a pyramid which we have adapted, but it's a very simple one. The values, the drivers, the behaviors, everything that sort of describes your strengths, of course, in terms of who are you. And so for you, I'm curious, with your personal brand manifesto on, and with your experience, what would you say for women is the thing that they need to really be aware of?
Themselves, I think. We're all put under so much pressure to build a personal brand. That's all you hear at the minute on social media. And I'm so grateful that personal branding has gone from being this niche, ego-driven activity that everyone just presumes is for people who have got an overinflated sense of self, into something that I think we all recognize we don't need one, we already have one, but actually going through a strategic approach of building a personal brand, you're able to shape what that personal brand looks like. And I think we all recognize that that's something that is only going to benefit us in our career. But I think in the mix of it going mainstream and all this pressure from various different people, and probably including people like myself, to build more, post more, create more, there's a huge amount of pressure for people to become someone who they're not, because they're trying to compete with other people who are doing something similar. This person's posted better than mine. Why? This person's posting, screenshots of tweets. Maybe I should be doing that. And when we kind of get into that kind of thought, it comes across in lots of different areas of our life. We do the same with, I've got this car, you've got that car, I've got this house, you've got, we all compare. It's part of human nature. I think you'd be lying if you say you didn't compare yourself at all. But in the process of doing this, we've all become the same. And it's just such a shame to see, like, building your personal brand is a thing that should make you stand out. It's a thing that should make people instantly recognize you and want to work with you. Even if it's a very small group of people in your industry that know you, you want to be able to stand out. And in pursuit of getting likes and virality and more followers and more engagement and all of these things that we're all told a good personal brand has, we've somehow lost the essence of what a personal asterisk brand is, which is ourselves. And I can relate to that acutely. I've been doing this for many, many years. And it wasn't until recently where I really took a step back and we were looking at my content strategy. And I remember saying to the team, like, this just doesn't feel like me anymore. Like, this was me, a few years ago, and I still stand by everything that I've posted. I'm very proud to be where I am, but it's not where I am now. And so what can we do to fix that? And I think, in short, to answer your question, it's like, who am I? What do I stand for? And I don't stand for post on LinkedIn anymore. I stand for just fucking go for it. Like, life is way too short. You want to travel, go and travel. You want to have a baby, go have a baby. You want to start a business and see if you can grow it, do it. And that's what I stand for now, which is so far away from personal branding, but personal branding has been part of my journey. So for anyone listening who doesn't know me, I've got 250,000 followers, or just under, on LinkedIn, 370, nearly 400,000 across social media in general. And I'm very proud of that, but that's come off the back of being the girl that builds personal brands. But I'm so much more than that now, and I want to be more than that. And so I gave a talk to my community earlier today. As part of my How to Build Your Personal Brand course. We have a Discord community, which in many ways is actually, I think people find more valuable in the course. So they buy the course and then they come to the community because it's part of it, but they're like, wow, like this is really cool. And I was talking to them today and I said, your life and your career has ebbs and flows. I started originally posting about recruitment, and then I started posting about recruitment marketing, and then I started posting about marketing, and then I started posting about personal branding, and now I'm posting about other things. I said, don't be afraid to change direction, whether it's in your career, in your life, in your content, because people will come with you as you change direction. They will grow with you as you grow. So yeah, I think it's being yourself and really knowing who you are. That's what's missing. Stop comparing yourself or trying to be someone that you're not. Stop optimizing your hooks and your copy and your pictures and your quotes, and just show up in your raw, getting over the flu self, because that's how people want to see you, because that's how they can see themselves.
Truly, yeah. And like you just said, like you turning up with it, and it is about, it's changing direction. For me personally, it's part of the journey. Otherwise we will get stuck. So it's part of the evolution, it's part of expanding your range, it's part of deepening your capacity. But I work with women in corporate, in political system, as I call them, corporate system. And it's interesting, they don't have social media. Some of them are actually not even allowed to have social media. That's a different story. However, the way we look at it, or I look at it, is everybody has a personal brand, whether there's a woman or a man. It's who we are, as you said. And one of the simplest way for us to explain it is, what does your manager or line manager, what do they say about you when you're not in the room to anybody else? And that's it. So and sometimes they say, well, I don't know, and that's telling in itself. Because and the other question I sometimes get is, Alina, I have no control over what people say about me when I'm not in the room. And that's what we say wrong. You have actually a lot of influence in how people perceive you.
I would actually argue, if not completely determined by you. You can't control other people's actions, but you can absolutely control other people's interaction with you. And of course, not every day you're going to be perfect, and not every day you're going to be chip chop. Like I'm not feeling 100% today, and the projection of my personal brand today is maybe not as polished and as fluid as I would like it to be, but you are in complete control over the interactions that you have with people, the way that you greet them, the fact that you gave them that extra help on that project they were struggling in, the fact that you messaged the CEO and said, hey, like, can I take you for a coffee one day? I'd love to get to know you. These are all things that you're completely in control of, and these are the things that people remember. I remember, I'm such a big believer in teaching through stories. So I tell stories, Alina, so I apologize.
I love stories. That's the best way of communicating.
I agree. We used to work on Bond Street. We had a beautiful office, biggest waste of money I've ever made, but it was a beautiful office, 45-person office on New Bond Street in Mayfair. And there was a little tiny independent coffee shop that opened just across the road. And everyone that came into that coffee shop in the morning, I used to get in about 8 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Everyone that came into that coffee shop in the morning worked in finance. It's Mayfair, right? It's all funds. It's all much fun. And they were all so rude. And it's not because they were rude people. They were clearly delightful human beings. Always open the door, always say thank you if you'd open the door for them. But they were so rude to the barista because they weren't thinking. They were thinking about work. They were like, oh, I need to get in. This guy needs to hurry up. God, it's raining outside. Am I going to get to my Barry's boot camp on time? Blah, 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 blah. All the noise in there. And you could see it in their heads when they were engaging with the barista. And I would watch these predominantly, men working in finance, but women too, snatch these coffees off these baristas, not saying thank you, not saying please, and not even looking these people in the eye when they were ordering. They'd be ordering like this. And I watched this happen, you know, over a few weeks. And I remember I went in one morning, and you know, the guy asked my order, and I gave my order, and I said, "How are you?" And he looked up at me, kind of like shocked, and he said, "I'm good, thanks. How are you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm good. Like, the weather's so nice, isn't it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, so where are you from originally?" Because he had an accent that wasn't English. And he said, "Oh, I'm from Greece." And we had this sort of 20-second interaction. It wasn't hugely long, but that man left with I left with the biggest smile on my face, but he also left with the biggest smile on his face. And then every other time that I went in, he said, "Oh, hi, Amelia, how are you?" And we had this little interaction. And I know that one little 20-second conversation that we had did more to build my personal brand. Obviously, I wasn't doing it from a strategic sense, but the context of this conversation did more to build my reputation with that person than any other interaction I would have had that day. And that is personal branding. It is being, whether you have social media or not, you have a personal brand. I've got a personal brand with my kids. My kids have a personal brand, etc., etc. It's formed of all the little interactions that we have and how those interactions help people paint a picture of who you are. If you go into a coffee shop every morning and take the coffee of someone without saying please and thank you, you are giving off, "I'm not a nice person." And that is how that personal brand image will form. If you're going into a coffee shop every morning and saying hi to the barista, you ask them how their weekend was, you ask them how their kids are, do they have children, have they been on holiday recently, gosh, you work so hard, how do you deal with it? Your personal brand in their mind is being built of these minute interactions, and it's going to be a wholly positive one. So that is personal branding. It's not what you post online. It is how you interact and how you behave, how you act with other people.
Absolutely. I mean, that's truly it's how you behave on a consistent basis. And, you know, actually that's it says is when, because it's perception is made in small little interactions, as you said. And one of the ways that the easiest way. Yeah. And I mean, the question that I always ask is how do you think, again, I'm going back to my world of corporate, how do you think your manager describes you on a good day? Because again, we can have bad days. You said, we might not be well, and we're all allowed, we're human. But on a good day, how would they describe you in 3 words? And they could say, I'm very competent, and I am a team player, whatever comes to mind. And then the question is, how would you love them to describe you when you're not? And actually, that's the little gap. And most of the time, there is a gap between, I think they describe me like compassionate and smart, but I would love them to describe me as strategic, as whatever comes. And that's, to me, this is how we play. This is that's a personal brand as you think it is today, and that's what you need to work towards. Aspiring to create that image.
And that is what I call becoming her, or becoming. It is becoming and behaving in the way that the person that you want to be would behave. And some people call it manifestation. You can call it whatever you want. But if you interact with people and you behave in the way that you want to be, right? You want to be that successful person. I used the example the other day. I had this client a couple of months ago who was possibly one of the rudest people I've ever met, but that's a conversation for another time. And he was complaining about he hasn't have enough followers and he's not getting enough engagement, all these things. And I said, "Well, what are you doing about it?" He said, I'm speaking to you. You're gonna help me. And I said, "No, what are you doing about it? What are you doing? Are you following the behaviors of someone who should have 100,000 followers? Are you replying to everyone that DMs you? Replying to everyone that comments on your content? No, of course you're not. So if you're not becoming that person that you want to be, you will always stay stuck in the situation you're in. And it's not just about personal brand. It's about your career, about your life. If you think you're constantly being overlooked for something, then be the person that doesn't get overlooked. If you're constantly going on dates with people who are horrible people, you're the person that doesn't go on dates with horrible people. Like, you can become whatever it is that you want to be, but you have to behave in the way that you are already that person in order for that to happen.
Yeah, and that's where the control, I said, that's where we absolutely have influence over the behavior that we want to, how we want to be seen.
The only thing we have influence on, really.
Yeah. And, I think, I can't remember the exact code, but it was something on the line that only angels sort of know us, is when we are with ourselves. That's how we should behave with everybody else, because it's when no one is looking, is really That's the consistent behavior.
Isn't that a great shame?
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. And it's interesting. Well, you reminded me of something else, because you said it at the beginning that, personal brand it's us. It's, being aware of who we are. And there was another book that came to mind. It's called The Gift, which it was gifted, talking about stories by a dear client of mine. And it is, what's the name of, it's sort of, I have it in my book. Now I've got a whole lapse. Well, it's Edith Eger, actually, The Gift. But she says that the prison is in our mind, actually, and the keys are in our pocket. So, we can always change. We can always get those keys and create. It's about creation. Creating the person, becoming the person who we want to be.
Absolutely.
Are you okay? I can see you creeping away. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating. So tell me more. I know, we're sort of getting, but I'm really curious in Millie. I'm curious as to, as you said, in terms of you becoming the next version of Millie. What's coming? I'm curious. What's the most audacious project that's out there in the universe for you?
I have aspirations of doing mainstream TV, and it's not. Well, I'd be very untruthful if I said it's not because it's self-serving. Like, of course it is. I want to be on TV, right? It's a career aspiration. All career aspirations are self-serving, but there is a greater reason for it. And I mentioned it earlier, but I think so many women, particularly of all classes, races, creeds, etc., get overlooked, undervalued, underpaid, not because of a lack of competence, but from a lack of confidence. And I feel like, you said the prison is the mind, you have the keys in your pocket. I found those keys, and I found them, luckily, before I turned 90, which is where most people find them, I feel like it's my moral obligation as a woman who is very confident and is 100% okay with the consequences of being myself, and does have the audacity to go out and just ask for stuff, for me to pass those keys around. And so by being on TV and showing people what's possible and interviewing people and having a podcast and all these things, I'm able to elevate what I'm doing at a scale that is just simply not possible by running an agency. And so to who I'm becoming, honestly, big question mark, Alina. Like, I don't know yet. But what I do know is that I am sitting on a moment. I call them big red button moments. I had one to quit my job to start Clout, my agency. And I have another one now, which is, do you blow up your whole life that you're feeling misaligned to and maybe take a chance on something else? Or do you stay as you are and continue to be miserable? And I don't really know what the next stage of my career looks like, or what the next stage of growth or impact I have on the world is. But I know that I've just pressed the big red button and I'm like, right, we're going all in. So what that looks like is we've got a podcast coming out. We're really going all in on the content and really heavily focusing it on towards women, which was a big decision for me, because my audience is 50-50 split. Like, I don't have a female aligned audience, but that's what I feel pulled to do. And so to your point about, we were saying earlier about what is a personal brand, I said it's really being true to yourself. I would not be being true to myself if I continued to put kind of corporate-y branded content out there that was palatable to everyone, because that's not where I am anymore. It was where I was then, but it's not where I am now. So we're going all in on that. And the future for next year looks like brand partnerships, as much speaking as I can get my hands on. I want to be working with the biggest brands in the world and inspiring the women within those businesses to find their voice. That's kind of my North Star, is helping modern women find their voice. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because we're all born with one. Little girls, especially my little girl, are the most confident children. They are the most outspoken, the most assertive, the smartest, all these things. And somewhere between 11 years old and 21 years old, it gets beaten out of us. My eyes are too big. I've got cellulite. I have a spot on my chin. I'm too stupid. I can't vie for that role. I'm not qualified. Somewhere we get it beaten out of us. And I have a feeling that as I go on this journey, obviously through a capitalist format, I'm going to land somewhere that's going to lead me impacting probably women in a way that's a lot more charitable and a lot more philanthropic. So probably not, it's probably a wishy-washy answer, Alina, but I'm still trying to figure it out. And the reason why I give you a wishy-washy answer is I want people to feel like it's okay to not have an answer. You know, just because you've been an expert in something for a long time doesn't mean that you can't then begin something new. So I'm very excited.
I love that. I love that. And actually, for me, it's even more so, Amelia. And I'm actually very passionate about this piece of not knowing. It's in my community. I am part of this community called 4PC, 4%. Coaches in the world, run by Rich Litvin. But and there is a dear friend of mine called Rita. She says it's not the how, it's not the what, it's not the why. Interestingly, it's the who. So who will help us to, and again, it's about setting an intention. It's, who knows how you will get there. And the vision will become clearer and clearer as you start it. For me, I live my life still through experimentation. It's like, this is an experiment. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, and most of the time it doesn't in the way that you think, but it just leads you to the next step and so on. And I mean, having a vision of what that could be, as you said, women and impacting and changing the world and charitable and philanthropic, who knows? I'm sure it's just a question of the red button you said, which I love.
Yeah, you know what? I just think life is very short, and the more successful that we become, whether it's in our careers or in our relationships or whatever, the more risk adverse we become.
Mm-hmm.
Too much to lose, like we can't do that. And everyone that I spoke to over the last year or so about sort of winding down and just mulling through my agency was doing 2 million quid a year at one point, but it wasn't making me happy. It didn't feel aligned. And everyone I spoke to said, do it for 2 more years and then sell it. You can get a couple of million quid from it. It'll be great. And maybe I'm the silly person, but I just don't want to do it anymore. I want to feel pulled to do something else. And I feel like as we get more successful and I'm, sitting on all this potential cash and potential exit, the more risk adverse we become, and therefore the stupider decisions we make, because we feel like, I've been playing my hand too long. I can't walk away now. And actually, I think one of the most powerful things you can do sometimes is quit and do something else, because like you said, everything's an experiment. You've done this experiment now and it works. Do you want to keep doing the experiment that works, or do you want to go and try and do a different one? And I think life's too short not to experiment and have wondering time, I call it, Alina.
Yeah, I love that. And we can do both, actually, I think, in terms of the audience, because, not everybody has got so much audacity as maybe you and I have put together, So I always, yet. And I think people have sort of different, but I totally agree with you. The more we have, interestingly, and the older we get, the risk averse is, and I feel even uncomfortable saying that, because I've always had this sort of risk fire in me, and yet, and it's another dear friend of mine, actually, Varian, who says, what you're not willing to lose, Alina, it has power over you. And that's always, I always stop and say, okay, if I'm not willing to lose that, it will have so much power over me. So you just have to be willing to let go, whatever consequences.
And also have some comfort in the fact of, like, what's the worst that could happen? You'll just be back in the same situation you were in before. And that, we all catastrophize our decisions, but it's like, that's the reality. Like, you're not going to lose it all, are you? Because you could go and get a job at Uber. Like, you're not going to. And isn't it amazing to start thinking that way? It's so expansive. So
yeah, and actually, I think even in my book, which you sort of know, for me, that why not has driven so much of what I've done in my life. It's, people say, why should I do it? For me, it's like, why not do it?
Why not? Yeah. The best advice I can give anyone listening who is saying, yeah, but it's easy for you, it's easy for you. I quit my job on a Friday with £1,400 in my bank account. I had a mortgage and child payments due for my childcare 2 weeks after I started my business. I had no plan B, no savings I could liquidate, nothing. So if it didn't work out in the first week, I was done. And I had my first 2 clients by the following Thursday. And the reason I had those first 2 clients is not because I had hundreds of thousands of followers. I had like 10,000 people who were even in any kind of network that I was involved in at that point, which I appreciate it's a lot of people. But back then, no one cared about someone doing personal branding. They're like, why are you doing that? That's a terrible thing. But I had the attitude of, it will always work out. And I don't mean that because I know it's going to always work. Of course, I don't know. But I believe that it will. And if I believe that it will, it normally always does to some degree. And how amazing is it to go into a situation not with the fear of what could go wrong, but to go into it with the knowledge that, what if it all works out? How amazing is that? Imagine, going onto that dating app tonight, it's going to work out. What decisions would you make if you knew it was going to work out? If you just started your business this year, maybe it's off to a slow start and you're getting frustrated, it's Christmas, you thought you'd be able to buy people lots of presents and you can't. Imagine if you know it's all going to work out eventually. Like, it completely changes your mind. It takes you from a place of fear and puts you in a place of just like, okay, we've got room to play with here because we know it's going to work out. And when you operate like that, it tends to work out because people gravitate towards that energy and they want to be a part of it. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. It's that sort of mindset, as you said, it's again, is that little adagio as it's going to be okay in the end.
Yeah, everything's figured out.
And if it's not okay, it's not the end. There'll be something else that's coming.
Look, I lost my first business at 23 years old. The whole thing went bankrupt. I had to get rid of my house, sell my car. I had to move back home with my parents after moving out when I was 18. Everything is figure outable, trust me. Everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, you and I can talk a lot more, I think maybe to be continued. And,
Yes.
I am so excited. I mean, I sort of feel the excitement energy of what's coming for you, being on TV and making all of that impact. So to be continued and to be followed, Miss Millie Sordell.
Miss Millie, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, and also for everybody. As I said, this is a wonderful way to finish off the year. Wishing you phenomenal. I mean, actually, is there anything else, Amelia? I forgot to ask you. Is there anything else? I think for the community that's watching that you are doing next year that maybe you want to mention to them?
Yeah, well, it's not next year. We've just launched it. Actually, we just launched the How to Build Your Personal Brand course. And I think for anyone who is sitting here thinking, gosh, like I really should get started, that is the best place to get started. It's everything that I know about how to build a personal brand from scratch, 0 to 4 million, 0 to 250,000. And it changed my life building my personal brand. So if you're someone who's thinking about, I should do this in January, get the course because it will change your life.
Fabulous. Well, that's great. That's a nice little Christmas gift for everybody to treat themselves. Start now. Why wait till January?
Don't wait to a new year to start a new life. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Thank you so much, Millie. Thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody. To be continued.